Hello again. This is the image I decided to work with this week, another library. I spent my time experimenting, looking at different ways I could highlight the historical and contemporary aspects of the building while still trying to incorporate my connection. Let's take a look. I started by labeling the location. I stayed in the same library vein but chose a more significant location. It seems to be important to me to establish the history of the building first, then add in my personal narrative. I did that here. Started at the beginning by overlaying an image of the library when it was first completed in 1912. Next, I overlapped the architectural qualities of the building. Again, these are obvious points, but I feel it's important to state these because, as you'll see, I build from them. Expanding on the first round of statements, again, all these labels are factually based. At this point, I begin to introduce my personal narrative to the image. I explain why this is the library I selected and the connection I have to Gladys McBean. More expanded personal narrative. Progressing on the timeline, introducing an image of the building in 1982. Adding in the information about the status of the building in 1982. The last bit of information I added was that the building reopened as a museum in 1988. At this point, I stopped with this version of text. It felt too much to me, like I was opening a web link, but nothing ever collapsed. And so every box and every line created a chaotic overlap, completely obscuring the image. For this second direction, I started with 3 images of equal size. I recognize that this breaks the point of this assignment, but I needed to try it and at least rule it out. I started with labels, and then captions. Instead of individual text, which I felt crowded on the last example, I wrote my own that summarized what I wanted to share. Again, all the information established the history of the building. Next, I called out elements I wanted to highlight in the images, using bold text and lines that connected the text to the images. This blue text was another layer of information. It was meant as a second read, but also ties into the original black text. Here, I introduce my own narrative. The Roman weight references past observations or beliefs, while the addition of italic acknowledges present-day facts. At this point in the process, I began doubting myself again. The layout still felt like I was layering text on image rather than integrating it. Here again, starting with an image and space around the page. Adding the label at the top of the image, and a caption placement. It was a quick moment of editing that I pasted the text half on, half off. I wondered if this could be a metaphor to work into the image. The text outside of the image represented the past, while the text inside the image spoke of its current state. I am a designer and I worry about readability, so I made the text on the image bold. Here, I continued the past-present metaphor, even switching tenses, which feels a little silly. I wonder if I should call out this more, though, more than just using a heavier weight. I increase size and weight. Here again, I added the blue text as an additional layer of information. It tries to use the same treatment I explored previously, with the blue text tying into the original black text. I introduce another image here. I couldn't help myself, it helps me make connections, and I started to outline any mention of Lincoln or Gladys McBean in blue. I realize at this point in the design process, I'm avoiding placing text over the image because it will be illegible. I decide to hell with it and place a large paragraph of text over the grass. I then decide what I want to call attention to in this paragraph, the text speaking of the parking lot, and I increase the scale and color. I add in a narrative fact. It's obscured by the text, but it follows the same rule. Again, at this point, I stopped. There are a few interesting graphic treatments that I've created with text in these exercises, but, and this is my fault, I created everything on a slide and narrated it, so it feels more like a video. Martin, you mentioned last week that I could begin exploring these videos as a narrative form for this exercise, but video has always been a way for me to present my work. I don't necessarily want it to live in this medium. So, in a last-ditch effort this week to work in the medium I want to create in, I decided to create a book layout using some of the text treatments I discovered here. I enjoyed putting this work in context. Layering text and images and creating treatments for the image, the left-facing page is intentionally pixelated, helped me recognize some other elements I might work in, namely color and the map. So this is where I end for this week. I like this book's direction, but I want to work on integrating the text and images more. This experiment also made me realize that translating part of the image into pixels helped me start layering and playing around with the different graphic elements more than I did when the image was identifiable. Thank you again for watching, and feedback is always appreciated.